welcome to Montlake. We are so thrilled to bring you some great racing here from the Montlake Cut. Cal versus Washington. Ready to go. Up at the start, we have our first race almost getting us set up. I'm Steve Todd, class of 1999 for the Huskies. I'm alongside Phoebe Grady, class of 2018. We are so excited to bring you these races this morning, and we're going to kick things off right away with a women's race coming up on the water. Here we go.
All right, we are at the start line for the women's 4th varsity 8. In lane 1, we have UW's 4th varsity 8. Lane 2 is Cal. In lane 3, we have another Washington boat with the 3rd novice 8. We're getting in some lineups, starting with Washington's 4V, Cox and Lily Kurtz. Then in 8th seat, we have Vicky Trenton, Bree Hoffman, Isabel Tinsley, Allie Jakeway, Kate Russ, Izzy Peters, Kaylee Bird, and then Cora Madison. Hopping over to Cal, we have Coxon Emily Kendall. 8th seat, we have Eve Brancato. 7 is Philippa Lundgren, Gwyneth Fagg, Sydney Curvin, Kate Nixon, Gabrielle Jennings, Maylee Nelson, and Bella Lady. And then we're going to hop back over to our UW 3rd novice 8 with Coxon Kate Fox, stroke seat Kate Elward, Riley Behringer, Bethan Evans, Claire Cunningham, Kylie Hoons, Alyssa Ditto, Amelia Jordan, and Samantha Reetbrook.
So the first taste of some Cal Washington racing for these crews. Some of these freshmen haven't gone head-to-head with California here in the duel. Very exciting to get things going, though, this morning. There's thrilling racing happening on the water. It looks like we do have a start. We're going to have our drones flying high above for most of these races. We'll get that picture to you in just a few minutes. But right now, Phoebe, these younger athletes, we're going to see what's going on with how these athletes can attack this race early on.
Yeah, this is a big race. It's a really important one for both Cal and Washington. There's a lot of young talent, and this is, they've had both teams some good racing under their belt, but this one is a historic one. It's really your first taste at this long-standing rivalry. Looks like all teams, all boats, they got a clean start. You can see kind of here, it looks like we've got that buoy line in, so hopefully no close blades today. But it's a little bit windy out there at the start line. We're hoping it'll calm down, but we've got some clean racing so far. A little bit far away angle, but right now all three crews just chugging away and should be getting into that first 500 meters here.
Yeah, and you can see the setup beginning for Windermere Cup next week. We're pretty excited to be back-to-back hosting weekends here at Montlake. We've got the white buoys that you see there are where the log boom will be set for the Windermere Cup races next Saturday. So if you're able in Seattle, hope you can join us here to watch the races in person next weekend. We will be back on air to live stream the Windermere Cup races as well. But right now, looks like a close race. Tough to call the margin right now between these Husky crews and the Cal Bears in the middle there. So as we look down, you can see the white blades of Washington, the blue and gold of the Bears in the middle there between the two Husky crews.
Yeah, it looks like some really great racing. All crews kind of still potentially within that contact range. Cal, nice clean blades. Washington's 4th varsity 8 right there with them. Our 3rd novice 8, nice and close with Cal. So some really great up-close racing for all boats.
Yeah, and you can see, so the buoy line cutting straight down the middle of the race course, that's going to be dividing the lanes 1 and 2 between Washington's 4V and the Cal 4V, and then to the left-hand side of your screen, right-hand side for the Coxons, is that Washington 3rd novice 8. And it looks like if you look at the blade work from Cal, it does look like you can see that Cal is up in front of that 3rd novice 8. Just looks like the Washington 3rd novice 8 is just slightly in the puddles of the Cal 4V here.
Yeah, I would agree with this angle. That Coxon's going to want to ever so slightly move away from those puddles coming off of Cal. That's a good spot for Cal to be in, to be sending off their puddles to another boat. Looks like that Washington 4th varsity 8 is right there with them. Little bit tippy with this wind, but both boats having really good races back and forth.
Yeah, and as we saw, just the conditions at the start, I think we're going to see the most challenge is going to be right at the starting platform. Things are a little bit more wide open there. You can see just a ripple of the water moving across here as the crews get past Fox Point, and they're in the second 500 meters. Nothing that these coxswains and crews can't handle, just enough to make it maybe a little challenging at the start line, but really pretty great race conditions here on Montlake, and we can see as the crews get closer now, we're going to be able to call the margin here. You can see that one of the referee flags is up, just calling for Cal to kind of move back to get a little closer and hug that buoy line just a bit. But fantastic racing setup with the starting platform, getting the buoy line laid down in the Montlake Cut just adds to a whole nother level of racing that happens here.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to be close to entering the cut. Cal and Washington in lane 1. Looks like some really tight racing between both boats. The great thing about racing out here on the cut is it's a little bit quiet in that first 1,000 meters, but as you enter that cut, it gets a little bit tighter. The racing really gets fun as you get towards that end of the race. You start to kind of hear people on the shoreline cheering for both boats. And as we're able to call that margin, it looks like Cal is up about 1 length over Washington, maybe Washington fighting to maintain contact, Cal just pushing for a little bit of open water.
So this Cal 4V doing well to get a little touch of open there before the cut. Very nice row coming from California here. Emily Kendall, that coxswain from Seattle, familiar with the waters of Lake Washington, doing a nice job leading her Golden Bears down the race course here. We'll see if the Huskies can turn it up. We've seen some great sprints in the past during the duel. We've seen crews that an open water lead is tough, but there is a good chance that we're going to see the Huskies really ramp up that stroke rate and get going here in the final 700 meters or so.
Yeah, there's a lot of race left for all boats in this last 750 meters of the Montlake Cut. That 4V really is going to be digging in, checking their rate. They look pretty matched in rate. Cal just outstroking Washington's lane 1 a little bit. And that third novice 8, again, this is going to be a big race for them. Their first shot against Cal, they're really going to start to dig in. It looks like they're trying to creep back on that margin on both boats as well.
So we're coming into the cut we'll hit that 500-meter mark. Check the margin again and see can the Huskies kind of dig in and find that next gear.
Yeah, it looks like Cal just did a little lift in their rate. You can see the water looks to have calmed down a little bit, which is great entering the cut. It can still get a little bit gusty as it opens back up, but Cal still over Washington. We'll be able to see a margin a little bit here, but it still looks like Cal is outstroking Washington's 4V a little bit. Nice clean blades from Cal.
Yeah, so Lily Kurtz, the coxswain for the Huskies in that 4V, is going to be calling for just a little bit more, trying to ramp up and close the margin as much as they can, but Cal seems to be extending out here. Very nice rowing from this Cal 4th varsity here.
Yep, they're really dominating this last 500. UW's really going to be trying to inch back in that last 250 so meters as they get into the cut. The challenge here, the nice thing with the buoy line is some coxswains can have that tendency to veer towards that starboard side as it opens up, but that buoy line is nice and straight. You can follow right along it. And we're going to be coming into the last 15 or so strokes here. You can kind of start to see that finish line for Cal. And it is going to be Cal winning that 4th varsity 8.
So Cal over the line, open water ahead of the Washington 4V with the Husky 3rd novice 8 in their final few strokes here. We're going to get these times for you as they come through unofficially. We are going to have to check these and correct. That's Cal finishing in first with 6:52.8 was the time for California. California was the winner in that one. We'll get the other 2 times for you in just a little bit here. But there's the Huskies finishing up the first race of the morning for the Dogs. So good race from the Huskies, great race from California there. Just going to run you down a quick look at the whole lineup of races for the morning. So next up, we're going to be moving into the men's races. The men's freshman 8 coming up next. Then we go into 2 women's races. We have the women's 2nd varsity 4s, and then the first NCAA event, the women's varsity 4 at 10:30. Following up, we got the men's 4th varsity 8. the fourth varsity 8 for the men, followed by the women's 3V, men's 3V, moving into the women's 2V, one of those NCAA events, the men's 2V, and then finally we have the Simpson Cup and the Shock Cup for the varsities. The varsity women racing for the Simpson Cup and racing for the varsity men's cup race is the Shock Cup. So there we have the times. I think we're gonna. Berkeley was definitely the winner there, so correct the graphic there, no problem. But we got a 6:52 for California and 6:59 for Washington. So lining up now, we've got our men's freshman 8. So one thing, talking to both these coaches about the freshman 8 and the value of freshman 8s racing. For Washington, it's the Grunnies. For Cal, it's their freshmen. And both these crews, led by Coach Brandon Schald for the Golden Bears, Nate Goodman for the Huskies. Really, one of the key things that the head coaches talked about with why these freshman boats are so important is it creates ownership in this program with how you race as a Husky freshman, how you race as a Golden Bear freshman. We have a start to this race. We're going to try to get these lineups through for you. We got Jake Basalto is your coxswain for the Bears. Ocean James is the stroke man. Nate Godden in 7. Xavier Gagnon is in 6. James O'Meara in 5. Andreas Simoni in 4. Johannes Benin in 3. Alec Wild in 2. And Leo Shetler in the bow seat. Anjali Pamarthi is your coxswain for the Huskies. Grunnies in the Grand Challenger 77. The Frosh 8 for the Huskies from Dallas, Texas is your coxswain. Tobias Bosnes from Denmark is your stroke man. Will Milne from New Zealand is the 7 seat. Devin Godfrey from Houston is in 6. Lucas Anderson from just down I-5 in Portland, Oregon is their 5-man. Jed Grieve in 4. Marley Kingsmith from New Zealand in the 3 seat. Oliver Leach, a fellow Kiwi, in 2. And Colin Ferris from Montclair, New Jersey, sitting the bow seat for the Huskies. They've spread out a little bit. So, Phoebe, when we look at this, like we see the buoy line there, but you can see the coaching launches chasing the races here. It looks like we've gotten a little wide off the buoy line here. So, just as a coxswain and thinking about that management of your race, what do you want to key in on in this early part?
Yeah, it looked like right off the start that wind was really pushing him towards that starboard side, so we can see that UW's a little bit far off that buoy line. But as a coxswain, it's pretty internal in that first 250 to 500 meters. You're really focused on your boat, your rhythm. You are peeking over your shoulder just to kind of see where that other boat is. It's a little harder when you're spread out, but no problem. We're going to see Washington and Cal here just fighting it out. It's a big race for that freshman 8.
And we've got California and Washington. I just checked Cal's rating. They're about a 38 strokes per minute. Washington, 37.5, maybe touching 38 as well. Right in that same rhythm for these two crews. And the times through the 500, it looks like Cal just slightly ahead of Washington there. So a good start for the Bears. Washington's going to have to rely on the middle, the body of the piece. So for those that don't race as often or haven't raced collegiately, but basically the race breaks down like this. You got your start, your high strokes, you settle into the body of the piece, and then we're going to bring it back up in the stroke rate towards the end here. But the wind is blowing just enough to make things a little tricky for some of the blade work. Pretty good conditions, but just that wind is going to be a little tricky all day long here, I think.
Yeah, you can kind of see off the coaches' launches, the flags on the back. You can kind of monitor that and see it's blowing just a little bit. We can see Cal really dominating that rhythm, and with that 2 split difference, there's still lots of time, like we talked about. They're into their second 500, starting to think about approaching that cut where the wind will die down just a little bit. So a lot of race left. Looks like Washington is getting a little bit better of a rhythm there. They're sitting up. They're dropping those blades in really nice, kind of coming out of that opening of the start line where it's a little bit windy to be able to control the blade work.
Yeah, so here we got a nice view here as they come up to about 750, 800 meters left to go in the race. It does look like Cal's got that lead. They're rowing very strong here through the middle of the piece here. California with some great power being demonstrated by this California freshman crew. This Cal boat, they had a chance, it's freshman racing has kind of gone by the wayside a little bit nationally, but Coach Franson and the guys got set up with some great racing opportunities for this freshman crew. They went up against the Brown third varsity down at Redwood Shores and were victorious there. And then at the San Diego Crew Classic, they raced against some of the other West Coast IRA varsity programs. UC San Diego, Gonzaga, and the Cal freshmen did phenomenal down there at the San Diego Crew Classic, coming away with a win. So these Bears, they know what they're doing. This is a very experienced freshman boat for both these teams here. So Washington and Cal, you can see California with the dark blades, Washington with the white blades and white tops coming down. We've got about, I can't tell where we're about 500 meters to go here, and they haven't separated out too much. We'll see if Washington can really turn it on here. Still, that 2-second margin that Cal got off the start remains the same.
Yeah, maybe Washington creeping up just a couple tenths of seconds here, but that 2-second margin in the last, probably about 350 or so meters. They're really going to pass under that bridge, start to think about that sprint, lifting the rate. How can they control the blade work as that rate comes up? Really make sure they're moving the boat effectively. It looks like Washington their bow ball is just kind of sitting on the 7 seat of Cal. Are they going to be able to kind of inch some seats back in as they approach that finish line in the last 20 or 5 so strokes here of the Montlake cut?
Oh, and Washington's going to make it close, but I don't know if they're going to have quite enough. I've got Washington at 42.5. California will take a quick rate check on them in the final 20 strokes or so. Looks like California responding to about 41.5 or so. And these two crews coming down to the line. It looks like California is going to just hold off Washington. Washington with a great effort in the end there. But California coming up to the finish line, and there is Cal, about a 6-7 seat lead there for the Bears. Good race by California. Washington just not quite with them at the end there, but a good race from Washington as well to challenge Cal and never really let them fully get to that point where you kind of break away. So just under 2-second margin there for the Bears, 5:47 to 5:49. I think what we can see from those times is that the wind is just enough to make it that we're not going to have some record-setting days here or record-setting times here today, but pretty fast overall for these freshman 8.
Yeah, that 2-second margin that was kind of maintained throughout the whole race. That makes for some really great racing between both boats. That contact the whole time makes it a really fun, intense experience for both boats. These boats in Washington and Men's Cal, they will get to face each other again just in a couple weeks at the MPSF conference, a new conference for men's rowing. The women, for the first time, won't face each other as Cal's women's goes out to South Carolina for the ACC and Washington heads to Indiana for the Big Ten championships. But the men's program will get to face each other one more time before they see each other at the IRAs.
So there's your official times for the freshman 8s, and we're going to be back to your next set of races here. We've got these women's second varsity 4s coming up, and then we'll be into the women's varsity 4s. So the next 2 races, you'll see something a little bit different. We're out of the 8s into the 4s, and we're going to see some great racing from the Bears and the Huskies in that. So the rivalry continues. 112 years for the men. 1903, the first time the Huskies and the Bears raced each other here on Lake Washington. Excited to have you back here for the 113th time running this. 50 years of women's rowing for both the Bears and the Huskies.
Due to time constraints, we now move ahead in the action.
Outside, so that Husky A crew, the Husky women's second varsity there is on the right-hand side of your screen as you're watching, and the Bears in the middle, and the Huskies B boat there on the left-hand side of the screen. So the starting platform, you can see the numbers of the lanes there. Really, really nice to have that finally to be able to back the crews up into that and have the racing be so easy to execute the starts there rather than a floating start. It's just fantastic to have this race course set up.
Yeah, again, some really tight racing here this morning in that first 500. And these bow loader coxed fours, you can see if you're unfamiliar, that coxswain is actually laying down. We have some splits coming up here. Looks like Cal is about 2 seconds ahead of that Washington boat, and those Washington boats are just tenths of seconds off of each other. So as the coxswain, it's a little bit harder to peek over your shoulder, and you'll see some corrections coming from that launch for that Cal 4. You really have to have some great communication with your bow seat as the coxswain, because you can't see what's going on behind you. So you really have to rely on your boatmates to make those communications back towards that coxswain to kind of scooch back over and give Washington's B boat a little bit more room. But again, some tight racing, still about that 2-second margin that we saw from the last race.
Yeah, and the rating, Cal looks just a little bit higher than Washington here, just about a beat and a half higher. Just as they go, they're both 36-ish, 37, 38, right in that range. It looks like Cal might be closer to 38, Washington closer to 36 here as we go. But just trying to get some traction here to make up that 2-second margin. So Cal, been fast starts all through the morning here for the Golden Bears in these first 3 races. They've really owned that first 500 meters of the race course. You can see in the background there that yellow buoy indicating that was the first 500 meters. The coxswains can look at these buoys all the way down the race course to kind of judge and tell where they are. The Huskies certainly know exactly where they are on this race course, practicing on it almost every single day. The Bears oftentimes quite familiar with the course as well from previous times up here at Montlake.
Yeah, it looks like Cal is still slightly ahead. Looks like the rates, Cal still overstroking both Washingtons. They're getting that correction again, so that bow seat's going to have to pass along that message to the coxswain, making sure that they're right along that buoy line, giving room to all boats. Looks like that Washington on that right-hand side of your screen is trying to inch back. You can see from the blades, it looks like that B boat on the left-hand side just slightly behind that Cal boat, but that Cal boat still dominating rhythm. Like Steve mentioned, their first 500s have been fast off the line. Looks like we're going to get maybe some drone footage here to get some cool shots of the Montlake cut.
And here we go. We've got that the Cal Bears up ahead of the 2 Washington crews. We'll see if Washington can challenge them as we get into that final 500 meters or so. But the Huskies have to make up a little bit of room, a little more than a little here in the final 750 meters. So these Huskies have a challenge on their hands to try to catch the Golden Bears. But Cal's doing a nice job in this women's second varsity 4 here. So all these programs, the men and the women, just incredibly deep, talented crews, athletes that have raced at the junior level, very high quality international level rowers as well throughout all of these programs. So Coach Alacosta, Coach Yas Farouk both do a fantastic job recruiting. A lot of these smaller boats, the lower boats in the crew, are also supported by their assistant coaches. Vanessa Tavalero, former Husky, is the associate head coach for the Golden Bears, and Kristen Gerard, also the assistant coach for the Bears, working with these young athletes for the Golden Bears. We'll see, can their Cal Bear second varsity 4 hold up here now as they enter the cut, or can the Huskies maybe take some energy from the crowd and really start going and getting the pressure together to sprint back into the Golden Bears lead?
Yeah, not only is this a really strong race between Washington and Cal, but between Washington's 2 4s here, they're really have some strong competition in her squad. It looks like that boat on the left-hand side of the screen is really fighting to push ahead of that boat in lane 1 from Washington, but it does look like Cal is still maintaining that length lead over both Washington boats. Both boats are going to be looking, or all boats are going to be looking to sprint as we enter the last 400 meters of this race. Hopefully we can get some footage here, them coming through the cut. Yep, both boats just really strong from Washington, and Cal just dominating a little bit, that length ahead.
Yeah, so close races here, trying to see what they can do. Can they put a little bit more into it here? We've got still overlap. I believe that bow ball of the Washington boat is right on the stern tip of the Cal 4. These Pocock 4s where the coxswains are tucked up in the bow, just really trying to leverage their crew all the way down. You can see almost the crosswind almost builds into more of a headwind, slight puff of headwind as they come into the Montlake Cut. The wind just kind of comes from the south, whips through Portage Bay, and just kind of turns down into the Montlake Cut. So you get just maybe a little heavier load here in the final 500 meters. Can you use that to your advantage and get some traction and really go? We'll see. And can the Huskies catch the Bears here for the first Husky win of the morning?
Yeah, it looks like the Bears really have stepped up their rate into the last 100 or so meters, but that Washington boat in lane 1 really made a big push in the last 50 meters, the last 20 strokes here as they enter the last couple strokes of this race. It is going to be Cal, then Washington in lane 1, and then Washington's lane 3 boats. But great racing. It looked like Washington did make a little bit of progress, just not enough water for them to pull that off.
Yeah, they had a good sprint, and they made a good effort to kind of close that margin there in the final little stretch, but not quite enough to catch the Golden Bears there for the number one, for the win there. So Cal Berkeley coming away with the win, 724.7, Washington 726.6, and the Husky B-Boat in 729.7. So great racing by the Golden Bears there.
Back up at the start, we are going to see those only two boats in this race, just Washington and Cal, so really focusing on each other. In lane 1, we are going to have Cal, and in lane 2, we're going to have Washington. In that lane 1, Cal, the coxswain, is going to be Kira Opstenik. In the stroke seat, we're going to have Maya Meskis. 3 seats going to be Alex Pearson. 2 seat, Allegra O'Sullivan. Bow seat, Zoe McKernan. Over to the Washington boat, the coxswain is Perry McLaughlin. 4 seat, we're going to have Paris Burbine. In 3, Kate Wittard. In 2, Violet Hallbro Brooksprank. And in bow seat, Mira Calder.
And we have some fast starts coming off the line here. I maybe have to check the rate for Cal again. I checked a 50 off the line. I don't think I quite had my stroke rate button working, but here we have Cal and Washington really close together. Cal, there's my stroke rate, about a 43 strokes per minute. I had Washington at about 44, 45 in those first initial few strokes. Settling into the piece now, getting into the body of it here, the swing, the power that's coming from these fours. So when you have a smaller boat, a little bit more happens from each individual athlete. It's not so divided out amongst all 8 rowers. We've got Washington and California. It's tough to tell from this angle, but it looks like a close margin between these 2 fours here to start this women's varsity fours race.
As we were seeing in kind of some of the previous races, it looks like that lane 2, that wind is just pushing them ever so slightly off that buoy line over to the starboard side. But again, you can kind of see that Cal coxswain peeking over to see where they are on that Washington boat. When it's just one-on-one, Steve, it's really your focus on your boat, but it's really a dogfight out there as they're in this first 500 meters and looking to move into that second kind of meat of the race of that middle 1K. That's where a lot of action happens in these races. Again, it's a little bit windy out there. You'll see a little bit of splashing coming off the blades as they kind of settle into the meat of this race and into their rhythms.
So Cal rowing nice and high and quick in this varsity fours. I'm getting their stroke rates in the upper 30s here. So Cal really attacking this piece. We'll see, can Washington maybe just with a little bit more power per stroke grind their way through California here at about a 36-ish, 36 and a half for Washington there, but good racing going on between these two. So side by side, you got the Huskies with the white blades and the purple tops. California, you can see those golden and blue blades with the white tops for the California women here today. So good racing going on all morning between these fours. We are so excited to get to the final championship, or the trophy, the cup races later on this morning as well, where we'll see some fantastic racing in the varsity 8s.
And it looks like both boats, nice clean blade work and really strong rhythms into this middle 1,000 of the race. A little bit closer margins than we've seen this morning with that 0.7 off of Cal just in the lead. So Washington really still is in that striking range of trying to make their bow ball just ahead of Cal. As we get into that second 500, you can see that buoy back there of that yellow buoy being the 500-meter marker, and into the second 500. Looks like both boats really trying to get those blades in. It's hard to tell with the angle, but it looks like Washington has made a pretty good push. Strong rhythm here, locking those blades in.
Yeah, really nice, smooth effort from both these crews. I really like what you see from the rhythm laying down. Paris Burbine, the stroke seat, the senior from Alpharetta, Georgia, really doing a nice job for this Husky 4. So the Husky 4 has been undefeated this year. They did great at the San Diego Crew Classic and fantastic race results at the Big Ten Invitational down in Sarasota last week. It does look like as we get closer, we can tell the margin a little clearer. It does look like the Washington 4 here, closer in your picture in the yellow Empacher hull, is up ahead of Cal. So hoping that Washington can really try to keep that power on, separating out by a little bit of open water here. Washington ahead of California at the 1,000.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with those margins, but it looks like we've got some times with the Washington 342.3 and California 346.5. So coming out of that first 500, that second 500, Washington made a big push to kind of get that couple second lead over Cal, and they're going to be looking to extend that in this last 750 meters as they approach the cut. Really strong rhythm. It looks like, yeah, we're seeing that margin now from the side. Washington got that open water over Cal. They're going to be really trying to maintain, stay calm, cool, collected, and continue to execute their race. Cal's going to be looking to kind of bring that rate up and take some inches back, but it can be hard when you're on that open water down.
Yeah, so this Husky 4 is going to be one of those favored crews as they approach NCAAs and the Big Ten Championship. Really good rhythm coming from this Husky 4. You've got two Canadian athletes there in the 3 seat and the bow seat, Kate Wittard and Mira Calder. Mira, you might know from her father, Dave Calder, Husky teammate of mine, director of rowing up at Brentwood College up outside of Victoria. A great rowing family for the Huskies. So happy to see a teammate's daughter rowing for the Husky women now. So Huskies looking great here. Got to stay away from those buoys a little bit for the Husky crew. Don't want to make any mistakes in this final 500 meters, but a good margin being established by the Huskies.
Yeah, it looks like this Husky boat was the winner at San Diego Crew Classic just a little bit ago. Cal was 6, so they have seen each other, and this is a good rematch for them. You can kind of see on that margin there, a good bit of space. Washington really trying to dominate this race. We do have both freshmen in both boats, so newer to kind of this collegiate racing, this NCAA level racing, and they will get another chance hopefully to face each other at the national championship this year. But both boats, strong rhythms. Washington, as we go into that last 300 meters, continuing to execute. How do they kind of lift that rate for that margin? And Cal looking to kind of close that gap from San Diego.
Yeah, and as we got a close view of the Husky crew here, I really like what you see with the entry of the blade and the impulse together on that initial push. And you can see when you get that clicking together, you open up water. And look at this Husky boat. This is the biggest margin we've seen this morning. It might remain through the day as the biggest margin of the whole day. What a great race for the Huskies here. Coming into the final 200 meters, going to make one more shift up before the line. The purple Big Ten with the gold slash across those uniforms for the Huskies, looking very sharp here in the final 500 meters. You got a great crowd outside of the Montlake Cut cheering on the Huskies and the Golden Bears here. So here we go. We've got our first Husky win of the morning. Washington to the line. Last couple strokes here for the Dogs.
Really dominating racing from Washington here in that varsity women's 4. Great line from Cox and Perry. McLaughlin, that Cal boat is going to be finishing out here in just a couple strokes. But really dominating racing from Washington this morning. The first win for UW. Cal coming in second in that varsity 4.
Yeah, good, solid race all the way down there. They had a better start, I think, than the other Washington 4s did, and really laid down power throughout the whole stretch of the middle of the race, and had very, as I said, with the impulse and the catches to really make things go in the final 500 meters. I thought a fantastic race for Washington in this women's varsity 4s.
Yeah, great rhythm set by their stroke seat senior Paris Burbine, really trying to come away with that win for her final Cal duel.
we go. Little quick message from Mary Whipple, one of our fantastic Husky alums. Mary will be joining us next weekend for the Windermere Cup call. But we have a start now for the men's 4th varsity 8s. Washington and California. California on the right-hand side of the screen and Washington on the left. You can see just a little puff of wind making the steering maybe more of a challenge than you'd like to see at the start, but nothing these crews can't handle. So California, we'll go through their lineup first here. Austin Chen's your coxswain for the Bears. Flynn English in the stroke seat. Mihalo Dedek is the 7-man. Thomas Barbie is the 6. Guy Ferreira is the 5 seat. Florian Unold is the 4. Peter Spira is the 3 seat. Jamie Arnold in 2, and Marcus Cameron in the bow for the Golden Bears. So California, Washington, both crews off the line clean. Looks like we're going to have another setup for some great racing here for these two programs. So in the Huskies, you got in the John Jacoby is the shell that the Husky 4th varsity in. The founder of the Windermere Real Estate Company, who continues to do such great support for the Husky rowing programs here. Maggie Gibbons is your coxswain from Washington, D.C. Henry Arden, freshman from Greenwich, Connecticut, is your stroke man. Rory McDonald in the 7. Galen Hardy in the 6. Connor Shoup from Stillicum, Washington, a grad student holding down 5 seat. Another grad student, Lucas Woodruff, a graduate transfer student from the program at UC Irvine in the 4 seat. Dmitry Chamatov is in the 3, Colin Sang from Seattle in the 2, and Billy Osborne from Mafra, Australia in the bow seat for the Dogs. So I'm expecting some good racing here. It looks like just over a second apart for California up over Washington here. So we've got some great racing going on. We'll see, can the Washington guys kind of get a little more traction here and continue to move up?
Yeah, we kind of see what Cal's done all day in that first 500. Really strong starts from all boats across the board from California. Nice clean blade work. Again, Washington, that little push from the wind on that starboard, or on that port side, excuse me, pushing them to starboard. They're on that left side of your screen. You're going to see them really clean blade work. Following that buoy line, it does, my guessing is Cal is just a little bit ahead with that angle, but really strong blade work from both boats. We're going to see kind of, as we've talked about, that second 500 getting into the bones of this race in their rhythm, really focused in together. It looks like Washington has kind of stabilized a little bit. It was a little bit bouncy in that first 500-600 meters with that wind, but as they approach that second 500 into the 750 down, we're going to see some really strong racing from both boats.
Yeah, and the Bears look very, very tighty with the blade work right now. I would say you can see the Cal boat on the right-hand side of the screen, just quickness to the water. I like what I'm seeing from the Bears there. Both these crews really polished rowing. I think that when you see the quality, or this quality of rowing at the 4th varsity level for both these programs, the coaches for both sides, Scott Franzen and Michael Callahan, both talked about just how important depth of their programs are, depth of their teams is to this. The quality of rowing at the lower level boats, how much it pushes and reinforces kind of how hard you have to work as an athlete to earn your way into the upper boats when you have such good racers coming in at the 4th varsity level.
Washington's being really gritty, kind of maintaining that just half a second behind Cal. Again, really in that striking range for both boats, for Cal to kind of push away and for Washington to kind of inch back on that lead. As we see them come across, really tight racing. It looks like Washington has made a pretty big push there. I think this is going to be some really tight racing as we enter the cut. And as a Washington alumni, the cut is a special place. You kind of gain a little bit of extra energy as you enter your home water of the Montlake Cut. You really kind of get recharged as you approach that last 750, going to the last 500, really starting to get gritty between both boats. Great racing.
Yeah, this is a great push by Washington to kind of get back on terms after falling behind California just a little bit here. So really showing something. So that word grit that Phoebe used, really a good description of this crew and how they are racing this morning. So the Huskies really charging into the Montlake Cut here. And California now is really as well, trying to respond. I think we are going to have one of the best races of the morning so far. Austin Chen for California looking over at the Huskies, the coxswain for the Bears. Maggie Gibbons, a great experienced coxswain for the Dogs there. seeing what she can do. And we got a time from the 1,500-meter mark, and the Huskies just slightly ahead of the Bears. We're going to see who can really sprint this one out.
Yeah, that second, third 500, Washington put in some work. You can see it looks like California just inching back. Really great response from Cal. How is Washington going to be able to respond? It looks like Cal just outstroking Washington. So we'll see if Washington, looks like they made a little bit of a response there with their rate. If they can kind of inch back that deck or so that Cal took back. But really strong racing, trading ball balls back and forth. But it looks like Cal really kind of dominating this last 250 meters. Good response from their boat.
Both boats up above 40 strokes per minute. I got the Bears at 43 and the Huskies at 42.5 there on their last shift. And it just looks like California, when they made that first shift of the rate, they really took power to the water. It looks like it's going to be California ahead of Washington there. But good race from both crews. That was a great effort there for Washington to get back on terms. You can see how much the Cal guys put into it during this race. So good, strong push from the Golden Bears there. Coach Franson's got to be looking at that crew and seeing some guys that really worked hard and responded well to a very tactical race from Washington. So close times there, 5:59.2 to 6 minutes flat, 0.7.
Yeah, both great experiences for both boats. We'll be able to see kind of and learn. We're going to be able to learn, and we'll see that a little bit of a replay on that finish line, just how close it was between those two boats. Again, trading that bow ball back and forth, that's going to give a lot of motivation to that Washington boat and something to kind of hold on to for that Cal boat, and just a testament to kind of how strong and resilient both boats are going back and forth down that course. So great racing. You'll see kind of how packed that finish line is with both Cal and Washington fans. So great day to be out here. Nice, really strong racing from both crews.
So a lot of crews, a lot of athletes racing here for the Bears and the Huskies here. 4 boats across, a little bit more of a challenge here. You can see we have a start to the race here, so we'll try to check some rates for you, get some times here as we go. But 4 boat across racing feels a little different than what we saw with some of these 2 boat races. You got a little bit more to keep an eye on. A little bit more energy off the start, especially. Things feel a little bigger when you have 4 boats or more to a racing start. So looks like clean start across the board, though.
Yeah, great start. Really great steering from the coxswains. It's a big job to be out there with this wind, with 4 boats across. The wind kind of pushing you if you're in that lane 1 into that buoy line a little bit, and then in that lane 3, you're really gonna have to protect yourself off that green can. That green can does not move. You hit it, your blades break. So we really, as a coxswain, you're tracking exactly where those cans are if you're in lane 3 and in lane 0. But great job off the start from all the coxswains and all crews. Nice clean starts. Again, nice and windy out there in that first 500 meters, but all boats, you're going to have a lot to kind of race out there as the coxswain. You're going to be looking at both sides and making sure that you're aware of all boats out there on the course.
Yeah, and this is the heart of the season. This is the main part of the regular season before we get into some championship racing. This is basically the highest quality of racing you'll see here on the Montlake Cut, coming down the California crews versus the Washington crews. Just exciting racing across the board. We saw that great race between the men in the previous go at it, and now this women's 3rd varsity 8 4 across racing. Fantastic day here on Montlake. The sun's peeking out. Things are getting very nice, and some great racing all throughout the morning. But just a quick reference to Coach Allie Lawrence with her sister rowing in the 3rd varsity 8. Coach Yas Farouk's done a fantastic job bringing together an elite coaching staff. Gordon Getzinger is in his 4th year helping out with Yaz and the Huskies. Allie Lawrence, as we said, working with these crews in the 3rd varsity. Sam Greenblatt, a Husky alum in his 4th year. And then Yaz brought on 2 Olympians to help really set the tone for the year. Brooke Mooney, a Husky Olympian, and Maddie Wanamaker, Wisconsin Olympian 2020 and 2024 for Maddie there in the Olympics for the United States. So what a great staff to really demonstrate to these young Husky athletes what it takes to compete at such a high level. It's really paying off for both Washington and for California. So as we celebrate 50 years of women's rowing, you can see just how high of quality the athletes are for both these programs.
Yeah, as we're into that second 500, too close to call on those margins, but really strong racing. A little bit of corrections coming from the launch, as we've kind of seen all day in that lane 2. That's a hard lane to be in right now with that wind, but really making sure you're giving room to lane 3. But really great racing. It looks like Cal's just got that dominant rhythm right now that we've seen kind of in that first 750 meters of the day. But again, a lot of race left in that middle 1K. As we get into the rhythm, you can see Cal just really nice sharp blades. All of these Washington boats going to be kind of not only fighting against Cal, but fighting against each other to kind of get that bow ball ahead.
So it does look like we've got close race between the 2 crews that are on the buoy line there. That UW Novice 8 and the Cal 8 are very close together here for those 2 crews.
Yeah, nice clean blade work from Cal. Little bit of backsplash there, a little bit of wind coming in, but looks like they're just a little bit ahead. If I had to call it, I'd say that that middle lane, those 2 middle lanes right there are really kind of setting the rhythm and the tone for the race. Looks like Washington sharpening up those blades a little bit as we kind of enter and approach the Montlake Cut.
Yeah, and I got California at about 36 strokes per minute there for Cal. And they look like slightly ahead of Washington here as we come down to the cut. But should be a good race here to finish up in the final 750 meters or so. See if Washington can really kind of try to ramp that rate back up. About 7 seats or so, 6 seats here for Cal over Washington as they get into the cut.
Yeah, that lane 2 boat, the women's, the Washington's Novice 8, so their freshman boat, really strong testament to their racing and their tenacity right now, going up against the third varsity 8 from Cal, who does have a mix of some senior, junior, freshman, sophomore talent in their boat. Coxon of the Cal 3V, Emily Nowak, a senior, so a lot of racing under her belt with the Coxon, Taylor Ione, really going to head. And that Washington Novice 8 really trying to get gritty, see if they can kind of close some of that gap on that Washington boat.
So we're going to try to get you up on that view of the finish line as we come through here. Here we go. We got, as they enter the cut, it does look like California maintains that lead. Sharp rowing from Cal, from the Golden Bears. Alacosta's got to be pretty satisfied looking at this lower boat for Cal, but doing a very nice job pressing away. This crew will be pushing their teammates here towards the end of the year as we approach the ACC championships for Cal, where they're going to have to match up against Stanford, as well as a number of East Coast crews, including Syracuse and Duke. Some quality programs there in the ACC conference. Washington will be headed to the Big Ten championships, where they're going to match up against Rutgers, the next highest ranked Big Ten opponent, and as well as Michigan, Ohio State, UCLA, USC joining them as well for in the Big Ten conference championships here. But the Huskies have not let California get that open water lead, but it's going to be a little hard to catch that 6 to 8 seat lead that Cal has right now over the Huskies.
Yeah, it looks like California is doing a nice job of lifting their rate. Washington just a little slower to lift their rate in that first novice boat. However, that Washington boat that was on the right hand of your screen, lane 3, is making a good push, but Cal just really dominating that last 250 meters in terms of rate, trying to just break away the stern from Washington's bow ball as Washington desperately just tries to hold on to it. They may have maintained contact, but it was Cal crossing that finish line, then Washington's third varsity 8, and followed by that second novice 8.
And there's the times. We can see I don't know that the times are. Well, California was definitely your winner there over Washington. California coming away with the win here. Good push by Cal through the line there in that final 500 meters, though. So the Huskies racing well this morning, and those 3 Husky crews showing some serious mettle, some battle through the race course there for the dogs. Let's go take a look at these lineups here. We've got Nikita Jacobs, your coxswain from the UK, in the coxswain seat for this Husky 3rd varsity 8. They're rowing the Chuck Holtz 3. Chuck Holtz, former Husky legend there. Many boats named for Chuck Holtz over the years. And we have a start to the race here. We're going to see if that angle, California really aggressive on those first 5 strokes there, really pressing quick and strong out of the blocks there. So for the Huskies, Mark Tennyson from Seattle's your stroke man. Ethan Walsh from Philadelphia is in the 7th seat. Cameron Tasker returning for the Huskies this week, junior from Norwich, Connecticut, or Norwich, UK, sorry. And he's in the varsity 8 last year. Cameron's recovering from some injury issues and back in it for the dogs now. Alex Gonin is your 5-man. Parker Rains from Sammamish is in 4. Matteo Belgeri from Bellagio, Italy is in the 3 seat. Ewan Morrow from Seattle in the 2, and Hector Guillemette is the bow seat from France. So that's the Husky lineup. Good start by the Bears, settling into the race now. I think we got a close one. It might be just like that 4th varsity race where we see a battle all the way down the race course here. So Ethan Nime is your coxswain for the Bears. Travis Jorgensen in the stroke seat. Antonio Di Stefano is the 7. Leonard Brahms in the 6. Evan Gold in 5. Nemanja Luladia is in the 4th seat. I apologize. I'm doing my best I can with that last name. Thomas Heerding in the 3 seat. Farley Diamond Brown in the 2. And Henry Ferrer in the bow seat for the Golden Bears. So you can see just really good, strong, quick racing here. Cal just up over the Huskies here as we hit that 500-meter mark. Just about 2-second margin. We'll see if the Huskies can really send it here in the middle 1,000 meters and kind of get back onto terms with the Golden Bears. So, Phoebe, one thing, you might have a little bit of extra background on some of these Husky crews. Husband is one of the assistant coaches for Michael Callahan. Michael Grady, Husky, our former Cornell grad and U.S. Olympic gold medalist, helping out Coach Callahan with the guys this year.
I do. I converted Michael over to the Husky family. I do have to give a special shout out. Nikita would like to say hello to his parents, the coxswain, the Washington 3V all the way back in the UK. So hi to Nikita's parents. But yeah, this 3rd varsity 8 saw some tough racing, some really hard, gritty racing over down in Sarasota, Florida a couple weeks ago. They've been working. We have people coming back from injury. So that 2-second margin that we've seen kind of all day from that Washington and Cal men's crews, really in that second 500 and that middle 1K, they're going to be trying to get into that rhythm, stay cool, stay focused, stay internal, control your race from your seat. That Cal, we saw a little bit of steering issues in that first 500 from that Cal boat with corrections from the wind, but they're doing a great job just placing those blades in a strong rhythm. But boats, it looks like Cal's just a little bit ahead of Washington on that rate, but Washington's got a nice rhythm. You'll see kind of now about Washington about 1.5 seconds back, just under, from Cal. So made up a little bit of time in that second 500, looking to kind of continue in that third 500.
Yeah, Nikita knows exactly what to do and what to call to get these guys to just take it inch by inch back into that Cal lead, and we'll see if California can respond. I really love the blade work that you see from both these crews. Just perfect entry of the blade into the water and creating great connections. So along with Michael coaching these 3V and second varsity guys, we've got a great staff for the Huskies. Quinn Clark and Nate Goodman. Also, Nate works primarily coaching those Husky freshmen up, and Quinn coming over from the University of Notre Dame, where he was the head coach of the men's club team there, doing a fantastic job with the Fighting Irish, and now joining the Husky staff and really an asset to Coach Callahan's coaching staff. We've got a battle going on between these two crews. What a great view showing side-by-side racing where the pressure, the intensity is on display between these two boats and these two programs. Side-by-side racing, nearly dead level now, I think, as we enter the Montlake Cut. Hopefully the Husky fans see this and they cheer on their dogs in these final 500 meters here.
You're really going stroke for stroke. Again, as you enter the cut, as a Husky, it really fuels you. You hear the people cheering. It kind of acts as an amphitheater, and those voices really just amplify, and you kind of take that in. Again, stroke for stroke between these two boats, really close racing. It looks like Washington just squeaked ahead with that 422.2 to the 423.0 at the 1500. So we've seen Cal have some really great responses to pressure today, and we want to make sure, and they're going to be trying to kind of continue to respond to that pressure from Washington. Washington's going to really try to continue that momentum. Blades are going to need to be nice and sharp as we enter these last 300 or so meters.
And the comment of the blades staying sharp, I just was watching the racing, and just it takes so much when you are sending it and you're working so hard. You've built up so much lactic over those first 5 minutes of racing that it really comes down to, can you hold it together? How has your physical training paid off? How has your technical side of your racing? Is it going to maintain through the finish line here? We've got a great push by Washington to reverse that margin over California now. Can Washington hold off to the finish line? Cal has some extra speed. We'll see, can Cal really crank towards the finish line, but it looks like Washington is moving away still in the final 10 strokes.
Yeah, both boats, again, nice and calm and collected. The coxswains are really going to have to maintain composure over their boats as it gets tight, and it looks like that Washington 3V taking away the win over that California 3rd Varsity 8. Unofficial, we have that time from UW, 550.4 over Cal, 552.6. So just under a 2-second win for that Washington boat. A lot of excitement over there. Some really great racing through that last 1,000 meters of that race.
Yeah, great race by the Husky 3rd Varsity 8. You can see kind of what it means to these athletes here. The excitement of racing your rival.
Again, we're on the start line of the women's 2nd Varsity 8. In lane 1, we are going to have Cal. In lane 2, Washington. We're going to go into those lineups. That 2nd Varsity 8 coxswain for California is Julia Fullington. Julia Ermler in the stroke seat. Lily Pember in 7 seat. Lily Abbott in 6. Shannon Keeney in 5 seat, the late Amy Fuller's daughter, who has a very strong and special connection to Yaz. Yaz was a great friend of Amy's, and quote on 4 crazy moms that Yaz gets to step in with Shannon. In 4 seat, Izzy Campbell. 3 seat is Sophie Ward. 2 seat, Olivia Roth. In bow seat, Lola Crampon. Moving over to Washington, the coxswain is Grace Murdoch. We saw her sister just a couple races ago in the 3rd Varsity 8. Grace from Atlanta, Georgia. Stroke seat, Ayla Muehlman. 7 seat, Olivia Hay. 6 seat, Madeline Parker. 5 seat, Jordan Freer. 4 is Emma Waters. 3, Chloe Shepard. 2, Shakira Murfin. And in bow, we have Jess Weir. A lot of rowers from New Zealand in this boat. We have about 3 gals from New Zealand. We're going to be looking at New Zealand coming next weekend for the Windermere Cup. Some strong talent in that boat as well.
Yeah, and we have a start to the race, and we got our drone up top viewing the whole way down the race course, showing you a great shot. You can see kind of the conditions, not bad, but I would describe that conditions at the start is just a little messy. That's going to make it a bit more challenging for you as you start this first 5 strokes and get into your high strokes to start the race. But a good start by Washington there. That 2nd Varsity has a ton of power and a lot of talent in it.
Yeah, you can see in those first 5 strokes, getting that boat up to start, those shorter strokes, those really powerful, trying to get a very heavy boat up to a very quick speed within 5 strokes. It's not easy. Each team kind of executes it differently. But in those first 15 or 20 strokes as a coxswain, you're not really looking over too much because you're just trying to get into the rhythm of your boat. And it does look like Washington is kind of peaking their bout ahead of California. Strong rhythms from both teams. Both boats just a little bit in their puddles, but great steering from both coxswains of Washington and California.
Yeah, and you can see just a little bit of that wake and wave rolling in off of Lake Washington. The wind's coming from the south, and so it hits that 520 bridge, hits kind of the opening around the point there, and you get just a little bit of wave rolling through in that first 500, 700 meters or so, and then things kind of calm down. The wind kind of shifts around as you get into the final 500 meters. But in the middle 1,000, pretty clear, pretty great conditions to race in through the middle 1K of the race course. But the Huskies had a fantastic start there. I really like what we saw from the start for the Huskies. Ava Muehlman from the stroke seat and Olivia Hay in the 7, laying down a fantastic rhythm for the rest of their crew, separating out from Cal here. That Cal Berkeley crew is going to have some work to do to catch up to Washington here. Washington owning that first 500 meters very well.
Yeah, as we kind of come into Fox Point, you'll see on the left side of your screen, really strong racing. Washington kind of making a statement in that first 500 with just about a 2-second lead. California's bow ball is just going to be kind of around that coxswain Grace Murdoch, so she's going to be able to use that as momentum to try to push her stern deck ahead of that bow ball of California. But nice dominant rhythm. You can say a little bit cleaner puddles coming from that Washington boat, just a little bit messier of puddles coming from that California boat. Washington really sending away nice strong rhythm. Cal, again, a lot of race left, just under 1,500 meters to go, and that California to kind of try to inch their way back from that lane 1.
So at the Crew Classic, these two crews did see each other, with Texas coming away with the win. Washington was in second with Cal back in third place by an open water margin between Washington and California there at the Crew Classic. So second time seeing each other this year, and then we'll see each other most likely again at the NCAA championships after their separate conference championships this year. But I think Coach Yaz Farouk's got to be looking at this second varsity and pretty happy with seeing the power laid down by this crew, really separating themselves out from California, stretching this lead and this margin through the middle 1,000 here. So the rivalry between these two crews has gone on since 1977. They're racing in the varsity race for the Simpson Cup, which Hunter and Dottie Simpson, the UW supporters, and their daughter Ann, former Cal Golden Bear rower, donating the Simpson Cup trophy for the varsities. But this Husky 2V really showing what it can do with stretching out this lead throughout the middle 1K of the race. I think you're seeing a fantastic Husky crew here. This is a really good result for them and sets themselves up well for racing next weekend at Windermere and then getting really ready for the critical races of the season when it comes to the Big Ten Championship and the NCAA Championship.
Yeah, really dominant first 1,000 meters, just about a 7-second, just under 7-second lead for Washington. And when you're in that position, you're able to kind of settle down into your rhythm, really work on kind of the flow and rhythm of your boat. When you have that little bit of confidence from that lead, Cal is really going to have to get that word gritty. They're going to have to dig in, kind of gain some confidence as they're moving into the last 1,000 meters. Washington looking to enter the cut. We've talked about it all day, just the kind of energy that feeds in the cut as you kind of hear those cheers for you going along that course. And Washington's going to be approaching that last 500 meters, still at least probably 2 boat lengths of open water, boat length and a half over that California second varsity 8.
Yeah, and this Cal second varsity had some good races. They California did really well against Syracuse and University of Virginia, 2 ranked teams when they raced them down at Redwood Shores. So for the Huskies showing up and racing Cal to this big a margin over a Cal crew that was quite exceptional against some other ranked teams. I think that this Washington second varsity is going to be one of those top teams going into the NCAA championship. But look at the Huskies go now, really powering through the race course here. Great body swing, great execution on the front end for the catch, but really all 8 pushing together. That's one of the key things that you're always looking for, is how well do the 8 operate as one.
Yeah, great racing, nice, calm, cool, collected rhythm from Washington. We'll see how they can maintain that as they start to lift that rate into the sprint. Cal coming through the bridge, seeing if they can kind of inch back into that pretty solid lead from the second varsity of Washington. Historically, a really strong boat for UW. And those catches are looking nice and clean as they kind of come through that finish line. You'll see on those screens there that bow just kind of peeking through from Cal. But both coxswains, great lines down the cut. Really strong racing from that Washington boat. Probably the biggest margin that we've seen all day.
Yeah, and just a little bit of lift of the rate for the Huskies. I don't think they're going to go to their max rate and sprint speed that they might hit in a close, tight race, but a little bit of a lift to power through the finish line there. So the Huskies looking very strong through the line here.
Yeah, and it is going to be, again, that Washington boat crossing that finish line just now. Really strong racing. Cal in their last 5 to 10 strokes of the race, really trying to execute to the best of their ability. Looks like that unofficial time for Washington, 6:37.8. We'll get California's here in a second, but great racing.
So Washington, Coach Yaz Farouk's got to be really happy with that race result. That's a solid time for the University of Washington women's second varsity 8. Great racing by the Huskies, really strong race there. And I thought what we saw from that start, that they really keyed in on that start. That was a very strong start where they separated out from Cal, and then they kept pressing all the way down, really never letting up. Races to happen. So here we go. We've got California and Washington lined up. What a great view now looking down at the second varsities for these two programs. The second varsity 8s, we've got in the Carl Lovestad for the Huskies there over in the far lane. Kieran Joyce, your coxswain from New Zealand, is in the coxswain seat. Ryan Martin from Newport Beach, the junior, in the stroke seat. Klaas Olelas from Germany in the 7. Quinn Hall from Chester Springs, PA, in the 6th seat. Got to start to the race. We want to watch these first few strokes here before we hit the rest of the lineup for both the Bears and the Huskies. It looks like Cal with quick, powerful, well-executed strokes. One of the staples that you've seen over the past years from California. Coach Franson does a great job coaching up these starts. Very technical on it, very well with the power application. And then you reinforce that with a ton of power, and you're going to end up with some very high-quality racing here from Cal. So Washington with a quick start as well. Looks like we have a very close margin as we come into the high strokes of the race here. So Kieran Joyce calling a great race for the Dogs here in the first 250 meters. We are side by side. This is great racing coming up right now. So Povi Yuskavicius, sorry again, doing a great job there in the 5 seat for the Dogs. Ian Burnett, your graduate transfer from Brown there in the 4 seat. Lyle Donovan, a walk-on track athlete. Parent, dad rode at Wisconsin for the Badgers. Marius Alsund is the 2-man, and Finn Griskauskas is your bow seat, the big 6'6" bow seat. Swinging away there for the Huskies in the bow seat. It looks like Cal and Washington, it's a pretty close margin between these two, with Cal maybe a seat or 2. Going to be Washington responding in the middle 500 to 1,000 meters here to see if they can kind of get back on terms with the Golden Bears.
Yeah, it looks like just 1 second separating these two boats. You saw in those first 5, Cal really kind of jumped and got their bow ball ahead and has just kind of maintained that little bit of distance over Washington. But as you kind of pass into that second 500, really a lot of grit here. You're going to see that Washington boat really trying to inch, and it looks like they took a little bit of move trying to level out with California. Both boats strong rhythms, kind of matching their stroke rates, matching stroke for stroke to try to just inch that ball ahead, but really strong racing. Looks like maybe Washington trying to get that bow ball just an inch ahead.
Oh, we have a very good race here. This is going to be one of those epic Cal and Washington battles all the way down the race course here. So coxswain Anna O'Reilly leading the Bears there. Dan Bradbury in the stroke seat. Jeremy Beal in 7. Tobias Christensen in 6. Maximilian Faust in 5. Rory Menzies in the 4 seat. Matthew Waddell in the 3. Alexander Baroni in the 2 seat, and Pablo Moreno, your bow seat from Sevilla, Spain, in there for the Golden Bears. So what a race between these two. So Huskies, you know that we've got the Bob Ernst celebration happening on Friday night before Windermere Cup next weekend. Bob, there's a million phrases. Full tilt boogie is one of the most familiar, and this race is going to come down to that full tilt boogie, nuclear warheads at 10 paces type of racing that Bob would describe to us back in the day. This is fierce fight between these two, but that move that Washington put on there in that middle of the race, what a press from the Huskies.
You'll see them peek out just a little bit, about half a second ahead of that California boat. Again, that second, third 500, a lot of racing going on, a lot of rhythm happening between these two boats, but it is going to be Washington just kind of dominating off of that move. That was a really kind of shifting point for that Washington boat, and we'll see how California can respond as we enter the last 750 meters. Washington kind of gaining some energy from that move as they enter the cut. They'll hear those cheers. How is California going to respond? We've seen some really great responses from California today, and is Washington going to be able to hold them off with that just about 1 length lead?
Well, this is a great race, and Kieran Joyce, you saw that close-up of him early in the race. He is so cool and calm when he's racing. It's one of the things that Coach Callahan and I talked about at the Sarasota 2K was how deep and talented the Coxon group is for Washington. He's such an asset in this second varsity, keeping the guys under control, keeping them ready, really sharp rowing from both these crews. That California crew has a ton of experience in this second varsity 8. With some of the Olympians returning to Cal, Scott Franson was able to move some of these guys that raced at the varsity level the last few years are in this second varsity, and they're very, very, very good athletes that are in this second varsity for Cal. But what a response in that middle 1,000 meters for the Huskies. Power, precision, and really making a shift there when Kieran called for it.
Yeah, as they're entering and crossing under that bridge in the last 300 or so meters, Washington just really still dominating the second half of this race. How are they going to maintain that composure as they lift the rate? But they are going to be looking at a way kind of to break contact from California with just a little bit of open water, moving in with less than 250 meters to go. California really going to be digging deep into their well to try to close that gap, gain contact back on Washington, but again, some really strong racing here. You can see the look on their faces as they kind of enter that pit to finish out this race.
Yeah, what a push to get an open water lead. I did not expect, when we saw that start, I thought we were going to be in for that kind of race where it is just stroke for stroke all the way down. What a great push from Washington over the final 1,000 meters to take open water. You see Kieran slapping that gunnel. He is pumped to win this race. What a great showing by Washington there.
Yeah, you really could see the kind of the moment the race shifted right in that second 500. You saw like Washington just kind of take an inch, and then they just kept going all the way through that finish line. A lot of excitement from that Washington boat as they cheer congrats and good racing to that California boat.
Yeah, so solid performance by the Huskies there. That's what, when talking to some of the athletes and coxswains, they were looking for just how well can you put together the full 2K race. That was going to be one of the key things for the day, was can you get each of those parts to be as good as you can possibly be and put it all together into one just great 2K effort. And I think Washington really did that there. But great push by Cal early on in that. I think these two crews going into the championships down in Sacramento at Lake Natoma, these two will see each other again. Should be another great race between them. And then as they head out to returning to the Cooper River outside of Philadelphia there in New Jersey for the IRAs. So So as I talked about earlier, the Simpson Cup's on the line. Dottie and Hunter Simpson, long time UW supporters of women's athletics and athletics in general for the Huskies, and their daughter, Ann Simpson, rower for the University of California. And we have a start to the Simpson Cup. We've got the race on the course. The Huskies leading the overall series, 26 wins to California's 21 wins. That's a pretty close rivalry when you talk about one of the longest rivalries in women's rowing. But Cal really trying to press here, dealing with that little bit of bump and bounce there at the start. But Washington laying down a great strong rhythm here, dealing with a little bit of wake in that first 250 meters. We'll try to check a quick rate check for you. Washington up above 40 now in the high strokes of the race. A good start for both these crews.
Yeah, great start from both Washington and Cal. You could see those first 5, they're nice and level. Right now, it's a really close margin. You're in those first 25, 30 strokes of the race. Again, it's a really internal time. You're settling into your rhythm, into the bones of the race. Looks like the bow ball of Washington might just be peaking ahead of California. But just in this one-on-one racing, it's so close, it's intimate. You're really locked in, both crews nice and close to the buoy line. Again, freshman coxswain from Washington, Izzy Michelson. Little bit of steering there. Got to watch those buoy lines on that port side. But really strong racing and strong starts off of both Washington and California.
Yeah, so fantastic start by the Huskies here. We'll see what they can do. We've got just a little bit of breeze, nothing that's not too challenging, but enough to disrupt your blade work maybe. But these crews very experienced for both California and Washington. We've got a battle going on. 500 meters in, we're separated by 0.4 seconds. That's not very much of a margin between these two. You're talking less than a bow deck. Washington up, leading California there at the 500-meter mark. It looks like Cal may have come back just a little bit. We might be just right bow ball to bow ball here. Let's see if we can get our drone to be a little higher and above to see what the margin is, and we can see if Washington's held that lead or if California is setting up to attack this race like they can.
Yeah, that was a great move from California. At least when I was on the team, kind of one of the historic moves for California is at the 2-minute mark is a big move for Cal. It's a long historic standing. If it's still standing at the 2-minute mark, that is one of their big moves. They yell California. It's a big part of their identity when I was on the team. So as a coxswain, you're anticipating that 2-minute move. And it looks like they did take some inches, but Washington is able to respond. Very tight racing, just feet separating the boats from port to starboard, and then again just about a foot, 2 feet on those decks from Washington and Cal. Washington looks to be about just 1 bow deck ahead of California.
So right before we came out and got on air, Phoebe and I talked to Coach Yaz Farouk just a little bit, and one of the things that we both noticed as we reviewed the lineups and everything was a freshman coxswain from Mukilteo right up the road, Izzy Michelson, leading this Husky women's varsity. Exciting for her. Yaz said that one of the best things is how well she works with Grace Murdoch, who's been in the second varsity 8 today. The two of them just doing a fantastic job with these 2 Husky 8s every day at practice and supportive of each other and really trying to make this Husky women's varsity and second varsity as good as they can be. So Izzy came through the Seattle programs, kind of taught, as Yaz told us, kind of almost mentored and taught by the Ancient Mariners, one of the fantastic long legacy masters programs here in the Seattle area, doing a fantastic job for this Husky women's varsity right now. You can see the Husky varsity laying down a great rhythm here against the Golden Bears right now.
Yeah, really strong rowing, those close-ups of that Washington boat. You can see that freshman coxswain. Cool, collected, stable in her seat as she just peeks over that left shoulder over to Cal as they kind of increase that lead. It looks like that coxswain Izzy, she's going to be kind of on that bow dock looking to claim Cal's bow ball. Cal is going to be needing to make that move as they enter that cut in the last 750 meters. Anything can happen, but really strong, dominant rowing from Washington in that second and third 500, inching away each stroke. Again, that Coxon Izzy's going to be right about that bow ball and looking to kind of emulate that 2V race where they can get maybe hopefully some open water.
Yeah, and what a great race. Stroke seat Megan Lee putting down a fantastic rhythm there for the Huskies as they entered the cut, and you can see that Izzy called for a shift of the rate, shift of the momentum, and they made another move to kind of separate out from Cal even a little bit more. So really strong push by the Huskies here. We've got that stroke seat Megan Lee with Sally Jones right behind her, laying down great rhythm for the Washington women. It's coming down into the Montlake cut, separating out here between the Bears and the Huskies.
Yeah, as 3/4 of the race is down, that last 500 meters, they're looking to come under that bridge. We'll get some times. Washington just about just under 3.5 seconds ahead of Cal at the 1500, seeing if they can kind of inch that further in this last 500 meters of the race. It's getting loud. We can hear it from up here as we call it. It's a really great environment. It's fun, and it's hard to walk back from if you're down on that Cal boat. And they are still trying to maintain that contact from Cal, but Washington really just inching now for open water. Still almost clearing those blades from Washington and Cal. Strong blade work from both teams, but Washington just backing up their second varsity eights race with really dominating rhythm in that last 500 meters.
Yeah, that's one of the key things that I'm seeing from this race result is just Washington with a fantastic rhythm here and power being laid down. I think both the California crew is a very established crew with some great results when they raced those ACC teams a couple weeks ago. I think they're going to have a fantastic showing at the ACC championships and on to the NCAA. Both these crews should be contending to be in that grand final at the NCAA level, but great racing by Washington coming down through the line. Last few strokes for the Huskies. Here they are, Huskies winning the Simpson Cup for the 2025 season, and Cal is over the line. Open water for the Dogs. Some excitement there for the Huskies.
Yeah, great racing as we see those unofficial times. And Washington and Cal went 2-3 at the San Diego Crew Classic, just behind the national champions Texas. So they're going to be facing some strong competition in their Big Ten and ACC championships, and then hopefully meeting back up for the NCAAs. But we see those unofficial times. It looks like Washington 6:33.2, Cal 6:39.0. So really strong, dominant racing from that Washington varsity 8. A lot of smiling faces. Feels really great for them. Cal, really strong racing, especially in that first 500. Strong racing about to happen here. We'll see them just locking in from the start line. Still a little bit gusty out there at the start, but both boats locking in. It's kind of the calm before the storm. It's nice and quiet, big deep breaths as we approach that start line. It looks like we have a clean start in these first couple strokes of the race.
Cal has been showing tremendous starts the last few years. And then with returning these athletes from the Olympic squads back into California, dealing with a little bit of wake there. Cal looking strong off the start, though. So Cal integrating, Coach Franson talking about these guys returning from the effort, the emotional side that racing at the Olympics takes, reintegrating them into the team, kind of allowing the time necessary during that return to Cal in the fall and reintegrating into the team, but some fantastic leadership coming from some of these athletes there. That 7-man Angus Dawson from Australia, one of the key guys for Cal, has been a great leader throughout this spring season for them. The Huskies on their side, Logan Ulrich coming back from that New Zealand squad, racing in the Olympics in the straight 4, doing a fantastic job along with that whole Husky boat. Nick Dunlop tried out for the Australian Olympic team, coming back and leading the Huskies now from that Coxon seat. So experience, excellence, just the emotional side of this kind of racing coming through today, and Cal has a couple seat lead early on here as we hit 500 meters into the race.
Yeah, like we've seen kind of all day from especially the men's side from California. They've had really strong first 500 meters. Looks like in the last 20 or so strokes, they've kind of inched that bow ball further ahead. Really strong rhythm coming from California. But like Steve has mentioned, there's a lot of experience in these boats. So both boats know not to get too confident with that lead. And that Washington boat knows that they still have about 1,500 meters of water to inch back in that lead. It looks like that Washington bow's maybe sitting around the 3-man of that California boat. So again, still striking range for Washington, and California can't get too comfortable up there, but really great blade work from both boats. A little bit gusty through that middle 1K, but really strong racing as we see California maybe just take one more seat over Washington.
Yeah, and Cal at about 37.5 strokes per minute there, just sending it into this little bit of headwind that puffs down the race course now through the middle 1,000. Washington has got to be on terms with just getting that power, sending it right now. Here's a good shot of California. You can see the big bodies in the middle of that Cal boat swinging away at it. Power and leverage coming from this California crew. Ilya Azadi doing a great job there at the coxswain seat, leading his Golden Bears down the race course. It's going to be a matter of, can Washington respond? Can they just set the tone in the middle 1,000 meters and go for it a little bit? We saw early leads from Cal in some of the other boats. There's the Husky Shell swinging around the back end of the stroke, just with good power, good send, and great rhythm for Washington here.
Yeah, we see just under that 2-second lead, just over about a second and a half between Cal and Washington. So really strong racing through the 1,000 meters. Second half of the race, anything can happen. Coxswain Nick Dunlap for Washington, lots of experience, almost just missing out on that Olympics in 2024. He's going to stay cool and collected as he kind of guides. You'll see that face right there. He's just nice and calm. He's serious. He's focused. He's doing everything he can to spark that confidence and that motivation in his guys to kind of inch back into that California lead. But really strong racing. We'll still see that California bow just ahead of Washington, but Washington not giving them another inch.
Well, this is the epic racing that we thought we'd expect to see from Washington and California. Washington did not, when Cal took that big move, Washington did not let them. They kind of set the hook and tried to set them and reel it back in with good power, good skill, and excellent operation as a unit here. It's one of the things Coach Callahan's really looked for from this crew was what can you do when the pressure's on. I think that they are responding. Great rhythm being laid down. Ryan Smith, an excellent stroke man, just with that smooth rhythm to back it up with some power behind him now. These two crews are going head to head. What a battle, what a race coming into the Montlake Cut. This is just classic Shock Cup racing between Cal and Washington.
Yeah, it's going to get really interesting here in this last 500 meters of the final race of the Washington-California duel. We'll get some times through the 1,500 still. Just about a second, just over a second, separating Washington and Cal. So Washington kind of made up a little bit of time there between the two boats. And really, as they come into the bridge in the last 350 or so meters, a lot can happen. How is Washington going to respond? Little bit bouncy water with a bunch of boats going through the cut, a little bit windy, but really the racing we've been waiting for all day. Just great between these two boats, just inches separating them.
Yeah, it is California just by literally inches ahead of Washington there. Washington, can you see the grit on Logan's face there in the middle of the boat? You see the strain amongst all 9 Husky athletes, all 9 Golden Bears. Oh, some geese are in the middle of the race course. Get out of the way. We've got a race going on. This one is fantastic. Here comes California. Here comes Washington. I think Washington may have inched ahead now. We are still strokes remaining, though, where it's still plenty to be decided in the last few strokes.
It's anybody's race at this point, but really this is just tenacious racing. It looks like it might just be Washington squeaking ahead of Cal in that final race of the Shock Cup for the Washington-Cal duel, but you're not going to see a lot of celebrating. Oh, a little from Washington because it was a tight race.
There's confusion. I think some of the athletes don't know for sure. If I was watching, I would be excited, but I don't know that I'd be that unofficial time. I think it's going to be going down to literally a photo finish. That was a fantastic race. It's going to have to be kind of looking at the actual photo finish of this race. Unofficially, it's Washington 549.759 and California 550.297. Just over a half a second. I believe the margin might have even been closer than that. I feel like the Huskies might be just waiting a second to continue their celebration. That, or they might just be that exhausted right now.
Really great racing from both boats. You saw a lot of energy and tenacity out there from both teams. Cal to that really strong start, and then Washington just staying aggressive, staying collected as they just really exhibited mature racing through that second half of the race, just coming out with that lead. A lot of excitement, a lot of just happiness you'll see from that Washington boat as it kind of sunk in that they did with that half second, just about maybe a little bit under lead over Cal. But overall, really great racing between Washington and Cal in a historic 50 years of women's rowing for both Cal and UW out on the Montlake Cut today.
Well, what a great way to end the day. These crews racing all the way down. A special tug for me to see the name of one of my teammates who we tragically lost a few years back, the Brett Big Red Risinger, just inching ahead of the Cal Golden Bears, hands going up, not 100% sure, but that race was an epic race. California and Washington, these two programs, these two coaches led by alumni of the programs. I think that every day what gets put into the effort on the water comes to full display when you race each other.